Welcome to the Sustainable Living Podcast. Tips, tools, and tactics for living a heart-centered life that honors Mother Earth and her inhabitants. The information shared on the Sustainable Living Podcast reflects the opinions of host Marianne West, Janice Friant, and their guests. Please use your own discretion in research before applying any information to your individual situation. Now, here are your hosts, Marianne and Janice.
Welcome to the podcast, everyone. Today I'm excited to be joined by Saso Luznar and Jennifer Huse of the Venus Project, an organization based in Venus, Florida, that provides a model for transitioning to a resource-based economy. Now, Saso was raised in Slovenia and moved to the U.S. a year ago. He's been actively supporting the Venus Project and its goals to transition to a resource-based economy for the last 6 years. In that time, he's been a point of contact for Slovenia and also one of the administrators of the project's supporter teams. Jennifer has been volunteering with the Venus Project for roughly the last 4 years, and she helps with social media coordination and with various other tasks. Her background and education are primarily in biology, healthcare, marketing, and communications, which I imagine would be very helpful with your work on the Venus Project. Welcome, Jennifer, and welcome, Saso.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It's good to be here.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to have you. I've known about the Venus Project for probably about 5 years now. I saw, I'm not sure which, I probably saw a couple of the different Zeitgeist movies, and obviously I was very taken with it as well. I think for me, I was always looking for something that was an alternative to what we have now. And when I started looking around, there really wasn't a lot out there to be an example. So I think I, as well as many people who came across the Zeitgeist films, got really excited and really inspired. So I'm very excited to have you both on to explain more about it. But before we get into it, could you share your story? What brought you to this place in life with regard to the Venus Project? You want to start off, Saso?
I guess I was one of the people that wasn't really looking for the project as much as the project kind of found me. I just noticed it on social media. One of my friends pasted a clip from Jacques and Roxanne's interview on Russia Today, and that's the first time that I've heard really anybody talk about the problems that we have in such a way, and then also provide solutions that were quite interesting to me. So I wasn't really at the time that interested in these topics that we talk about now quite commonly. But I got interested in Jacques himself and how he presented his ideas and everything. So that's how I got more involved and tried to get a little bit more information and wanted to know if there's anything already happening and what and how to get involved. So that was my beginning in late 2010.
Okay, how about you, Jennifer?
I guess I was kind of always looking to do things to make the world a better place. My parents were missionaries, so they were involved in their own set of doing things that they felt would bring about a positive change, I guess, in the world. So I was raised sort of with that background anyways, and then I didn't really stay with their religious belief towards making the world better, but I got into a lot of volunteering with different organizations, just with various things like FEMA and other things like that. And I guess I kind of thought if we twerked things in this system or tweaked or whatever it's called, things in this system a certain way, it could, we could fix a lot of the different problems that were existing. But I actually was just watching Netflix one day, and I was just watching different documentaries, and at that time Future by Design was on Netflix, and which is one of the documentaries from the Venus Project. And I turned it on because it looked interesting from the description. And after I watched that, it gave such a new perspective to what was really the root of the problems that we were experiencing. At that point, I just went online and got some more information on volunteering with them and things like that. I was born in the United States and living in New Jersey, so Florida isn't very far. It's a pretty short plane flight, about 2 hours and 10 minutes. So I was able to go down there and work with them a lot more in person at the research center and get more and more involved over the years.
Okay, well, maybe before we get into the Venus Project and what a resource-based economy is, let's talk a little bit about the problems that the project seeks to solve. What are we dealing with here? What are the big major issues that film you saw, Jennifer, was addressing?
Well, that one, we have a couple of different documentaries. We have Future by Design, which is the one that I mentioned. We have Paradise or Oblivion, and we have our most recent one that came out in January, The Choice is Ours. I'd say they all address the problems that are going on. Future by Design is probably more from a engineering standpoint, whereas Paradise or Oblivion is pointing out more of the problems in the system. And then I would say that The Choice is Ours has really a good combination of both, of pointing out everything that is wrong and then really focusing on the different solutions. In particular, in that documentary and the other documentaries, one of the main points of the Venus Project and of instituting a resource-based economy versus a for-profit system is that it sort of gets back to the fact that we have sort of an operating system in place right now that is focused around money or this currency, and everything, all of the decisions that are made now basically are more so going the direction of being, or kind of were from the beginning, but more and more so going in the direction of the choices are being determined by how profitable it is and not how the well-being of the planet or the inhabitants of the planet are going to be affected by the decision. So a lot of the issues that are happening with the environment, with people being homeless when we have plenty of vacant houses, starving when we have plenty of food, our water being polluted when, from certain decisions, when we have other decisions that we could, put in place instead of, doing that, is all based around this for-profit system. So basically, one of the main aspects is to remove this operating system of using this monetary interference and to put in a system that is based upon the things that are best for the planet and its inhabitants instead.
Yeah, great. I think that makes a lot of sense. It's something that even before I came across the Venus Project, that was my question. How can we expect to get different results when our objective is profits and not the betterment of mankind? So that's, again, one of the reasons why I was so taken with the idea here. Some of the problems, just to be more specific, is we're eating our planet up, but with this system, basically. I found out more after reading Charles Eisenstein's book, Sacred Economics, where he really outlines it well, how the system is just based on us eating up all of our resources and commodifying everything to the point where at the end we just won't have anything left that's livable here. So,
and one of the a couple of interesting we'll call them interesting points too, is that the system that we have in place, I think everybody basically alive today hasn't seen a different operating system other than a monetary system. So it's almost like they think that it has to be that way, instead of realizing that this is actually a tool that we invented to try to facilitate things to work better, and it's actually now more destructive than it is beneficial.
Yes.
Because as you were saying about the resources, it's not even that we don't have the resources to do what we need to do for the planet and for everyone on it. We do, and now we're actually at a point in our in humans history or where we have this technology to make the resources that we don't have or are running out of, but because of a lot of vested interests in certain existing corporations and they don't switch over to these technologies and these other things that can greatly improve restoring the planet and improving everybody's lives on it. So as you were saying about the resource, I mean, a lot of things we have them, that's why I was bringing up the point of the homelessness. Just in the United States alone, we have roughly about 1.3 million homeless people, and we have about roughly 16 million vacant houses. So why? It's because those people don't have this currency to get themselves into a house. Why are we throwing away food into the garbage that's perfectly good instead of giving it to people that are hungry? Is because they don't have the money to purchase it. Not that we don't have the food. That's a small example of the interference that it is. But on top of that, there's also so many other things that are coming out that could produce even more food, like vertical farming and things like that. But people have vested interest, say, in horizontal agriculture, and so they don't make that transition yet. And there's just a big lag because of this.
There's a lot of entrenchment. People will just say switching to a different system isn't economically feasible because, again, if your ultimate goal is always profits, then that's always what you're going to be geared toward increasing. You touched on something that I think is really, really central to all of this, and that is that most of the people living today, I would say probably all of the people living today, can't imagine anything else. This is the way it's always been done. And I would include myself in that. I would say 10, 15 years ago, I knew something was wrong. But, because I've been so immersed in all of this culture, and my parents were immersed in it, and their parents were immersed in it, we couldn't imagine that there could be anything else. So for me, whenever I saw something like the Venus Project, I'm like, I would get so excited. And again, that is really the impetus for us starting the podcast, because we really felt like that was a huge impediment on humanity. If we cannot envision anything different, how in the world can we create it? So again, kudos to you guys for your efforts to help spread a new vision. I just wanted to share another thing here quickly, because I saw this today. I don't know if you're familiar with Chris Agnos of Sustainable Human, but he's always posting up these memes, and he posted this one up today. It says, "It is not possible to have an abundant society with scarce money. There could be an infinite supply of everything, but as long as we insist on meeting our needs through market exchange, there still wouldn't be enough to go around."
Yeah, Sustainable Humans actually they've been really great about sharing a lot of things in regards to the Venus Project and things like that. So it's really nice for them.
Yeah, Chris is brilliant with his memes. I mean, he puts them out there with the best visuals, and then he makes those wonderful films like How Wolves Change Rivers. So he's another person helping us to envision something different. So let's get back to what is the Venus Project, the entire Venus Project. Who invented it, came up with the idea, and what does it all entail?
I feel that we are very lucky that we have had somebody before us put together all the pieces of the puzzle, basically, and give us a blueprint of what that alternative is that we generally don't necessarily even know what we were looking for at that time. And that person really is Jacques Fresco with his now 100 years of life experience, and basically his 85 years of just working on that since he was a young boy in the 1929 depression is basically where he saw or observed that some things are just not adding up, that people were hungry in the streets, but there was food in the stores and people didn't have money to buy it. And, everything that was happening at that time had a big influence on him. So he went around and tried to expose himself to all these different ideas, solutions, proposals, and then ultimately, coming up with what he really phrased coined the phrase resource-based economy, and that's from his point of view, that's really his life's work. So for us to be able to reference that is really I guess more fortunate than we generally even realize. Because there's no real possibility for me personally to come to those conclusions on my own in the limited amount of time that we really have in this world. Whereas referencing somebody that had a lifetime of work in this area is really an invaluable resource. So Jacques and his partner Roxanne Meadows founded the Venus Project. They started in the 80s in Venus, Florida, and developed a research center there and build houses there and structures. There's 10 structures on the property. And they basically just did the best that they could between the two of them with building everything, with creating models of everything, with shooting videos of everything, and then ultimately trying to promote these ideas. Of course, we know that from the 80s and up to 2000 and 2005, there wasn't really a lot of opportunities because we didn't yet have the social media as we have it now. And it was very hard to get these ideas out there to the general population. So that was really kind of the first big step when these ideas became popular with the social media and with YouTube and with easy access to these documentaries. And so. Mm-hmm. The project or the research center is still there. Jacques and Roxanne are still working. They still have tours every Saturday where we have between 15 and 20 people each weekend coming and trying to learn more about it and get to meet them and ask them questions.
Could you describe a little bit about, first off, the model that he created?
Yeah, so it's basically his attitude was, what are the mechanisms behind the world that we see today? What are the laws that we put in place, meaning the human-based laws, and why they're not working out? And then trying to find out what are some of the natural laws that are out there, like dynamic equilibrium and how we're connected to nature, and then from there on trying to create a system that would fit into the real world, into the natural world, as opposed to just doing it the way that we've always done it, because obviously with all these problems that he saw, it just wasn't working out.
Well, before we get to that, I would just love for people to understand maybe some of the key components, say, of living in a community based on the Venus Project.
One of the things that is definitely, let's say, the biggest contrast from today is that we would have to first make or create a survey or do a survey of the resources that we have available locally in that area before we would build or create anything. So today's cities are generally grown haphazardly as people want to come into cities or out, or with more population, things get added, regardless of the resources that are in the area. So we would try to base it on the local resources available, and we would try to make it as nature friendly as possible from the point of view of not disrupting nature, not paving over everything, trying to avoid this type of transportation that we have today, which is extremely inefficient. Design cities so that we have public transportation, so that instead of being stuck in a traffic jam, you get access to fast and comfortable public transportation. And just design the cities from the ground up for a certain amount of people. And when the population reaches that amount, then we have to build another city in a different area. And what that creates is basically we can have a balance of how much the natural environment, how much of a population can natural environment support in a given area. And that would mean that there wouldn't be this urban sprawl. It would mean that the life would be a lot more comfortable, a lot more clean. And of course, we propose to use the best technologies that we have up to now, meaning automation and trying to do away with any kind of really repetitive and monotonous jobs out there, which we have a lot of.
Yeah, and it sounds like we're moving toward that anyway. Automation is coming to every sector of the job market right now. So, but that automation seems to be more geared towards, again, increasing profits and not benefiting humans.
Yeah, exactly. So the automation as it is today is, again, the technology itself is neither good or bad. It always has to do with how do we use it. So any kind of invention, any kind of technology, any kind of tool is always depends on what we use it for. So a lot of times when we talk about resource-based economy, we say that technology is just so much junk if we don't use it for bettering the social system itself and creating a more prosperous life for the inhabitants of the world. And unfortunately, that's what's happening today. A lot of cutting edge technology is used in the military for destructive purposes. So the technology is not really to blame. It's our use of technology that's the problem. We need to use technology to really free people from the regular, monotonous, repetitive jobs that we have today, in which we are kind of forced if we want to survive.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that in the Zeitgeist films and seeing a picture of a model of this ideal kind of Venus Project city that was kind of circular, I believe, and people would be more freed up to pursue the things that they wanted to pursue rather than having to work 40-hour-a-week jobs.
One of the I was going to bring up what you just mentioned too about with some aspects of the model, just of the cities and things like that, is the circular formation, and the reason that Jacques wanted to incorporate that, it wasn't because he wanted to just be architecturally different or something like that, and hey, my city's a circle. The reason that he has a circular design, or one of the reasons that he has a circular design, is due to transportation, like Saso was mentioning. Right now we have to go drive 30 minutes in one direction to go to one thing, and then back, and then other to go to another 20 minutes to go to another thing, like this. With the circular formation, and the proper public transportation in it, which Jacques has proposed, magnetic levitation, which is just starting to be touched on really right now. Elon Musk is, starting to do some things with Hyperloop and things like that. But, you would be able to reach everything in the city very quickly and efficiently by going around in a circular formation instead of having everything so sporadically placed, all over. So that would cut down a lot on the transportation issues, traffic jams, and things like that. In their building design, the way that they design it versus the way that we build now is a lot more disaster resistant. You'll notice a lot of the shapes of the building are they're dome shapes instead of what we have now with this, square rectangular type of shape. And again, it's not because Jacques architecturally wanting to stand out, against other people. It has to do with the fact that a dome inverts, the tornadoes, back up inside themselves so it doesn't rip your house apart. Everything that he's doing, it has to do with it being the most efficient and safest, both to the environment and the inhabitants in all of his designs.
Yeah, it sounds like he really put a lot of thought into this from just about every perspective that is involved with designing a city or an economic system. But getting back to that one, so how is exchange facilitated? Is there no money?
Well,
how does that
so
work?
that kind of goes back to what we started with the when we started the interview with the problems part. This is an inherent, I guess, mechanism in today's system. Basically, the reason why this monetary system is getting worse and worse is because it's based on scarcity. So and of course, in today's world, it's not even a real scarcity, it's perceived scarcity. So we have to make things scarce if we want to sell them. So what we want to do is basically the opposite. We want to create abundance, and we want to create access. So if the easiest way to try and imagine that is in today's system, we have public libraries, right? So everybody has access to a public library, and they can come in and they can check out a book or I don't know, up to X many books, and have them and read them and return them. So that principle can be used for other things too, and it drastically diminishes the need for resources and for the amount of products that we really make. And that goes across the board with cars, with pretty much everything that we use, other than, of course, having your own place to live and whatnot. But other than that, everything that we use, it's actually a lot more comfortable for us to just be able to use it when we need it, whatever that is, as opposed to being the owner and then also having to take care of things. We know that car maintenance is a pain in the ass today. Things break down, you have to take it into the shop, get back, you're out of a car for a certain amount of time, or whatever happens. All these things are actually quite inconvenient, as opposed to having transportation system that is really efficient and gets you everywhere faster than a car would through traffic. So that's really creating abundance to the best of our abilities as far as the resources that we have is really the key. So it wouldn't be any kind of barter system or any kind of credit system, or some people proposed energy credits and all these different things, which arguably are maybe a little better than what we have today, but it's still a mechanism that is used for somebody spending this much, somebody else that much, or there's still incentive to get more or whatever it is. So we want to try and completely avoid that.
Well, could you walk me through a little bit just before we move on from this topic? Because I want people to kind of get a little bit better of a picture of what life would be like in a community that is designed this way. What would a typical day be like for the average citizen there?
Well, I think that imagining yourself doing things that you really want to do without being constrained by what you can afford. So if you like to do your job, whatever that job is, then you would still want to work in that field and contribute. So if I'm a molecular biologist, then I would like to do research in molecular biology and not worry about whether or not I'm going to be paid well enough to, for my family to live, or, am I going to be able to support myself, or am I going to lose a grant, or, anything like that. So it would actually be a lot less stressful, and you would still do the things that you want to do. And of course, if you are doing now some kind of a repetitive job that you hate, which many people do, then you would be encouraged to go back studying maybe whatever it is that you didn't have a chance to study in your life, or engage in something that you do as a hobby now maybe, but you really wanted to do full time. Yeah, and then the environment itself would be designed within a city to really facilitate that. To have 3 meals a day, regardless of what happens, to have the basic needs covered: water, a place to stay, and education and healthcare. And that's really the start of everything. I think those are the basic things that we can all agree that everybody in this world needs, regardless of their social status, religion, values, whatever it is.
Okay, so people would have their basic needs met in the city. They would have access to transportation. They would be sharing things a lot more rather than owning their own personal things.
I just want I'm sorry, but I also just want to mention very quickly that while there would be sharing, it wouldn't be that people couldn't own quotes something if they wanted. If they wanted to, they're a photographer and they want to have that camera all the time in their hands to do something and whatnot. Okay, but some people might want to take a really nice camera, the nicest camera that we have available because they're going to their friend's wedding. Really, that's what they need it for, and they take it and they have the access to the best that we have available to provide, not what they can afford based off what they receive as a paycheck or something like that. And they can take it, and use it when they want it and have it maintained for them and have, know that it's going to be updated to the best that we have available. But if they do want to have something, there's no, it's not a dictatorship or anything where we're telling people they can't also, choose to hold on to something and maintain it if they wished.
Okay, that's a very important distinction. Thank you for jumping in there. For me, freedom is really, really, really important as we move forward. As a species here, freedom allows us to make our mistakes and learn from them. And too often, when we think that we have to have a hierarchy that tells us, what's good for us, we run afoul of our own best interests.
I think that many people, a lot of times, I guess one of the arguments is, well, the way that you guys are proposing this, we're going to lose our freedom. I would say that today we've already lost our freedoms, or maybe more accurately, we really never really had freedom. Because as long as there is a paycheck that is above your head, telling you this is how much you can do this month, that means that you're not going to go on vacation, you're not going to do this, you're not going to do that. So the paycheck really dictates your life today as it is. You can only choose, quote unquote, within your means. So you're driving a car that you can afford, not the one that you want generally, and all these things. So today, in today's world, it's already, your freedom or our freedom is already severely limited. And actually, the way that in the resource-based economy that we propose, these freedoms, quote unquote, would be greatly improved. A lot of people are kind of afraid of afraid of technology for this reason too, because technology comes in and takes their job away at that time, and that's that's not good for their life. That's just how it is. But
Right.
in a system like resource-based economy, you would be happy when there is new automation. It means that you would be working, instead of 20 hours a week, just 10 hours a week, and you would have time to, go
Yeah.
back to school or do other things.
Yeah, and I think that was the promise originally that was sold to us on automation. And it, when we first got our washing machines and we first, it was just going to make our lives so much easier. And it didn't turn out to be that way. We were certainly sold a bill of goods. I would completely agree with you that we are much, much less free than we think. When we start looking at our lives and exactly what and who rules over them, it's usually not our own choices that are running our lives here. So these kinds of systems, they seek to address that, and more often than not, it's really about expanding our freedoms and, again, turning technology to serve us rather than to enslave us, which is, in a sense, kind of what the other agenda
I just want to touch on this point a little bit more, because you actually brought it up before, and then Saso touched on it again. But the automation is already here. It's already being developed. It's coming. So it's not a matter of, are we going to go into a more automated society or not? Regardless of whether we stay in a for-profit, monetary-based economy, or we switch over into a resource-based economy, the automation is coming, because even in a for-profit system, it's cheaper for them to use automation than it is for them to use humans in many instances, and it's going to increase in the instances as the technology improves. So, because it's for profit, they don't have to pay machines vacation time, parental leave, health insurance benefits, things like that. So it is going to be vastly more profitable for them to implement this technology. But the difference between a for-profit system, a monetary system, and a resource-based system is, in the monetary system, this automation can really greatly worsen people's standards of living, because as their jobs that most of the time they don't even want are replaced by this automation, they don't have a paycheck. They're not going to be able to buy the goods. There's going to come to a point where this technology is implemented and they're making goods that people can no longer afford. And so, but versus a resource-based economy, where this technology is beneficial, as we mentioned, is freeing you from factory jobs, this, that, different things that may be redundant to you that you're not interested in, but you don't have to worry about losing your house, losing your car, feeding your kids, getting healthcare, things like that. It's a great improvement. But the really, I think, important thing, and I think now more than ever people are starting to see it is going to happen anyway.
It's happening. I mean, it is happening as we speak. And if people don't realize that right now, it's a fool's paradise that they're living in. We all have to recognize that automation is coming, and it's taking away a lot of jobs as we speak, and it will continue to do so for the foreseeable future. But if we are able to change our objective, from profit to the betterment of humankind, the technology could be turned to serve humans rather than to enslave them. I completely agree. And it's a good point that you make, Jennifer, because a lot of us, I think, are still not realizing what's just around the corner for us.
And I mean, we can stay in this system, and we can riot in the streets to keep jobs we don't even want, and not automate things, and try to fight over and over and over against these things that could be improvements, just to be able to survive or do things. Or we can switch the entire system and embrace it and have it be very beneficial. A really, really small example, this has nothing to do with necessarily changing the entire system, but as Sasha was saying before about the way technology is used too, a small example of it is drone technology. Drone technology can be used to plant trees, to drop off packages to people, beneficial things, or it can be used to drop bombs and spy on people. It has to do with the value set behind the operating system that's in place.
Yeah, but it's a very clear example that we can all see around us right now. So, yeah, good. Thank you for that. Thank you for giving me a clear vision, too, of what life might be like in this kind of a city. I want to make sure that we clearly explained what is a resource-based economy. What is the exact definition of
Well,
that?
I mean, there's so much to say about a resource-based economy. It's really kind of hard to stick to just one definition. But I would say that on the venusproject.com/resource-based economy is a nice write-up, basically, and there's also a nice 7-8 minute clip from Jacques directly explaining it. But it proposes, basically, it's a holistic approach with a global socio-economic system that utilizes the most current technologies and scientific advances to provide the highest possible living standard for all people of Earth. That's really kind of a paragraph definition. There's many topics that Jacques included in this proposal, and I feel maybe one of them that we didn't touch a lot is the aspect of human behavior and how it's really shaped and influenced by the environment that we find ourselves in. And again, this is probably a part of the project that generally we have the least amount of information on, and mostly people have a very strong opinion on this topic, and a lot of times this opinion is not really founded in any kind of scientific evidence, and the reason for it is, of course, that it has to do directly with our values. It has directly to do with our own view of the world, and so it's maybe hard to recognize what is it in your own environment that kind of pushes your buttons, if you want to phrase it that way. And Jacques really broke this topic down very well, and he created the environment, or proposes to create an environment where some of these, let's say, not constructive behaviors that we see exhibited today, like greed, like competition, and jealousy, and all these things, can be surpassed just by the nature of how the system is built and how it operates.
Yeah, that sounds like a whole other podcast show.
But I feel it's one of the it's one of the very important things that we like to bring up, because a lot of times people go to the website and maybe see the first couple of graphics and they think that the project is about design and about architecture. And it's really quite the opposite. And technology, like we said, I mean, all these things are of course tools for us to use, but if we don't use it for the purpose of improving people's lives, then they're not really constructive tools.
Well, it reminds me of our tagline here at the Sustainable Living Podcast, which is tips, tools, and tactics for living a heart-centered life that honors Mother Earth and her inhabitants. We really emphasize a lot that all of this really begins with the individual. We all kind of need to look at ourselves, what is not working in our own lives, how we can achieve happiness in our lives, and a sense of a happy cohabitation with everything around us in the natural world. And that's, again, it's something that each individual kind of has to do. it sounds like what you're describing is a system that helps to foster this. Am I correct?
Yeah, exactly. So the problem that we face today, and I think it's safe to say that we all, the three of us and everybody that's listening to this podcast, we all have our own set of problems, both physically and socially and psychologically, and we have our own set of habits and we have our own set of values. And a lot of times, those things are kind of the hardest to change about ourselves. And of course, because we remain mostly in a similar environment throughout certain periods of our lives, or even for the whole lives, some people remain in the same environment. It means that they're going to mostly be doing the same things because the same things are reinforced. As opposed to, like you said, if we want to make these changes within ourselves, we really have to try to surround ourselves with people that are thinking differently to the best of our abilities. Or if we don't have that option with people locally, then at least read books like the books that we have on the recommended reading list. Watch videos, lectures on topics that we, again, including me, haven't been exposed to in our lives, and try to get, a different view of the world and kind of re-examine our own values. But then, of course, like you said, yes, the idea of the project itself is that once you create this type of system, these values would actually be promoted and fostered from children on, and they really wouldn't have a lot of the problems that we have today. They wouldn't have problems of, realizing that, hey, collaboration is more functional than competition, or, hey, technology is good for us because it frees us from doing these jobs, or whatever it is, and these different types of education that today is very much out of date, can be updated, can be made fun, and all these things can be done within an environment that is just more proactive, more productive, and less restrictive, less stressful, less up to these mechanisms that we have today.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, just imagining what it would be like to grow up in an environment that celebrated collaboration and actually was collaborative and wasn't all based on competition and this whole bizarre survival of the fittest weirdness.
I was just gonna say that, elaborate on that a little bit more. What you just said. That I think that's a huge aspect of this model versus the current system, is that it's a collaborative model instead of competitive. So our kids, everyone are raised in this competitive system where that's why, like you said, survival of the fittest, and maybe a few succeed, whatever can be considered success in this type of system, and a lot of things aren't resolved as efficiently as they could be, when it's like a scientist battling another scientist for a grant to get an idea, or instead of everybody working together and getting the problem done.
Yeah. Man, you put. I have to just comment on that because you hit the nail on the head of why we. To be honest, if we're going to start seeing that we are so behind in science and we're so backward because of these this way of doing things, this competitive way of doing things that's all about the ego. And if I I discover something that throws everybody else's theories into the trash bin, well, I have to be silenced because, heaven forbid, their poor careers go down the drain,
I mean, there's a lot of also, just another note on that particular topic is there's a lot of, cases where, and it's unfortunate, where, even in the scientific realms, where because of this type of competitiveness that's built in it, and it also being a for-profit system, even the data is skewed toward the vested interest that's contributing, the grant or the whatever funding toward, the research. I'm not saying every case, but it is, it doesn't.
Too often, and it has hampered us in ways that we are soon to find out are much greater than we ever suspected, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a big one. I mean, there's so many things that this just basic switch from competition to collaboration would change.
Yeah. I think
huge.
one of the biggest, a big component of it. One of the
together with the moving away from the monetary incentive, that's really the key.
Yes. Let's have our prime objective, the betterment of humankind. To me, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah. There's always just the easy comparison from how much monetary resources goes towards war effort as opposed to science, and then you have this factor of 1 to 5,000. So imagine if the roles were reversed, where we would be today. People think that we have a fast rate of technological development today, but it's actually held back considerably by the system that we have. We've been going fairly slow, I would say, in the last 60 years as compared to what we really had resources to do.
Yes, I completely agree with that. And again, I think there's many reasons to feel hopeful that change is in the air. I think the internet has done so much for helping people be able to research things for themselves. The gatekeepers are obliterated now. And so just that alone, I think, is going to help us to move towards that collaborative, more betterment of mankind-based system.
I think the potential is definitely now much greater than if we look at, when Jacques was talking about these things 40, 50 years ago, where it was, really, really hard for people to imagine anything of the sort that, any technology of the sort that he was talking about, as opposed to, today, at least that part of the project is somewhat more clear, or more, let's say, at least easier to accept by people because they already see so much automation in their lives. But that's not really the problematic transition. We always find it easy to go to the next best technology because we get positive reinforcement right away, right? The phone is better, the television is better, the internet is faster. It doesn't take much for us to adjust. But when you have to adjust your values or your behavior, now that is a lot trickier, and that does not happen quickly. That needs a process, and it needs education and many of the things that we generally don't like to hear. and so that's why I think that potential we definitely have. There's no limit to, practically no limit to what we can do. But the biggest obstacle that we face is really our own values, our own status quo, basically doing things the way that we've been doing it all this time.
Well, looking around, it seems to me there are a lot of people that are pretty fed up with the status quo right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think more than ever before, and like you said about now we have internet, and people are able to speak to people all over the world. It's breaking down a lot of barriers that have to do with racism, sexism, or discriminating against people based on their, place of origin and things like that. It's not where it should be, but it's starting to break that down versus when we didn't have the internet.
Absolutely, and that's a very positive development. We aren't where we were 20 years ago. We have changed, in a lot of good ways. So yeah, and I do think that the internet has had a lot to do with it. We wouldn't have a podcast here trying to help people see what could be possible if it wasn't for the internet.
But on the other hand, I would just put my 2 cents in for the other side. Like, I wouldn't hold my breath and expect the technology itself is going to change or solve our problems. It's not. There will have to be let's say, an organized effort to try and change some things around as from the point of view of what we're doing right now. Because, technology itself, like we said before, is just a tool. And until the values that we see today are still around, this technology will be just as vulnerable to being misused as it is to be used for good.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. My hope, again, is that it just helps to awaken humanity to what is wrong with things and how they could be changed for the better.
Yeah, it's a tremendous tool, definitely.
Yeah. Hey, we're running out of time here. We're getting to the end. I can't believe how quickly this has passed. Before we say goodbye, I would just like to ask first, what is the status of the Venus Project right now?
Well, there's always things going on in the Venus Project. There's a couple of things that have happened, let's say, fairly recently. Jacques had his 100th birthday last year, so we had a big event in Florida.
I can't believe it. That is a big one. I didn't know he was still alive.
Oh yeah, he'll be 101 next month.
Yeah.
He's still tours every Saturday.
Wow.
Yeah.
So people can go there and meet him?
Yeah. People can still come and meet him and ask him questions and whatnot. He's not running around the grounds anymore too much, but he's still on tours every Saturday. He's there and he answers questions and all that stuff. So yeah, we had some interesting people that were there. Of course, we had about 600 people in the audience, and then we had guest lectures, some from the project and some also out from supporters out of the project, and so that was really a great event. And then soon after that, Jacques got the award for his life's work from the UN, his work in sustainability and city design. And so that
when did this happen?
That was in July
wow.
of last year. So that was a pretty good reference, I guess, and confirmation for all his life's work. And then just in the end of November, then we had museum exhibit on Jacques' life open in Florida. It's called Jacques Fresco 100 Years of Vision, and it's still open until the end of April, I think April 19th. It's a great demonstration, I guess, of Jacques' life in a timeline going from his birth in 1916 up to today. And again, they did a tremendous job there. They really put together a lot of material, a lot of stuff from our archive, and they did some of their own research, and so it's really, really great tribute, basically, to all that Jacques has done. And given that it's an art museum, I think it's really nice that they included a lot of these social ideas and a lot of his efforts in that area.
And it's actually it's at the Baker Museum in Naples, which is one of or the top museum in the United States. And it's in Naples, which is actually one of the highest concentrations of wealth in the United States, even. So it was nice that that they did something.
Anything else?
We got about 40 volunteer chapters too around the world in different countries. Just doing locally things like presentations and screenings of the movie and different projects. On the website, thevenusproject.com, we have a part of the website for volunteers to try and come on board and help us out. Obviously,
Okay, so if people want to learn more or get involved, they would have to go to thevenusproject.com.
Yes, exactly. That's the best thing. And then there's on the bottom of the page, there's a get involved section, and where it says become a volunteer. There's different options for volunteers as far as where they can get involved into. And we have an online course, an extensive online education course that came online just a good month ago. And it's basically the most comprehensive course on resource-based economy and what we're trying to do in the Venus Project. That people can also apply for if they want.
Can they get that through your website?
Yeah, also through the website, yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, well, thanks, Saso and Jennifer, for coming on the podcast today and helping us to envision that world that we know is possible, but has not been advertised up to now.
Well, thank you for having us. It's always a challenge to try and present this in an hour. It seems like we always wind up talking a lot longer, and there's always things left over.
Well, and I'm sure for anybody who wants to explore this further, perhaps you guys can come back at some point in the future, because I agree with you. I think we've just scratched the surface, and there's so much more that we could chat about. But if you all out there would like to know more, I highly recommend that you go to that website, thevenusproject.com.
Yeah.
And also, you might even go to YouTube and check out some of the stuff, the films that are available on there. I will certainly share one or two of those links in our show notes when I publish the podcast here.
Yeah, we also have our documentaries on our website, which we don't have everything that we have on our YouTube on it, but we have a link to the YouTube on the website. But we have our documentaries right there.
Okay, great.
On the website too. So
yeah.
Once again, the internet comes to the rescue for anyone.
Yeah.
For anybody who wants to research more. Thanks again, you guys, and thanks to all of you out there. We will see you once again next week. Take care. Thanks for joining us on the Sustainable Living Podcast. For more sustainable living tips, join our Facebook group, Sustainable Living Tips, Tools, and Tactics, and follow us on Twitter.